Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith, Pennsylvania editor for the Center Square. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Anthony Hennon. Once again, state support for some of Pennsylvania's most noteworthy universities, like Penn State and University of Pittsburgh, has stirred up some mixed emotions for Republicans in the legislature. Basically, their relationship status is complicated. So can you tell us why that is?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things to keep in mind here. One, there has been more simply political tension, either based on the University of Pittsburgh in recent years had a controversial study involving abortion and fetuses that Republicans kind of cried foul about and worried over whether public funding was going to that. But this is sort of a larger divide on Republicans have been more skeptical of higher ed in growing years. Democrats have been not necessarily about the same. There's still been some support dropping, but they still generally support higher ed or trust higher ed much more than Republicans do. And so we're basically looking at, in Pennsylvania, the state-related universities are in a bit of a unique position where they're quasi-private, but also quasi-public. They get a lot of funding from the state. A lot of taxpayer money is going over to them. In the latest budget, they would be looking at a 7% funding boost, which would total about $640 million going to these four universities of Penn State, Pittsburgh, Temple, and Lincoln. But there's some holdup here. When speaking with Representative Jesse Topper, he argued that I think the sense of the House Republicans the last few years has been we're trying to be a partner. The partner doesn't just send money. If we're going to be a partner in this, there has to be some work on policy. There has to be some work on how things operate within the institutions themselves if we're going to incentivize students to go there. So essentially, it's looking like Republicans now are trying to rework the situation where they're less of what Topper phrased as an ATM, and more of a partner working with these universities and being on a more equal footing rather than just handing out money every year.
Can you get into specifically a little bit more how they mean being a partner versus just an ATM? That's a really apt description of the relationship over the last several years, but I'm curious, what do they think should happen in order to fix that balance?
Yeah, so there's a few bills floating around. One bill proposed by Topper would basically shift to more of a performance-based funding model where the state funding would be tied to metrics. It's like post-graduation earnings, graduation rates, basically trying to shift rather from just giving money based on how many students they enroll to giving money based on how well the students do after graduation or how many finish in 4 years as opposed to 5 or 6 years, as is becoming increasingly common. There's also proposals for more transparency in terms of salary details, where the money is going, basically making these universities a little more amenable to public records requests like many other public universities in Pennsylvania are. And generally just kind of working closer on, how they hash out how much funding is going to get sent out, how it's going to be used. If you go back to earlier this year during the appropriations hearings, you could see where, the Pennsylvania's public university system committed to freezing tuition, and they've done this for 5 years in a row now, whereas when the state-relateds were speaking with the legislature, they were asked whether they would commit to freezing tuition rates if they not only deliver on this funding, but increase the funding. And all of them said they could not commit to that. And so that seems to be more and more irking Republican legislators of, we're giving them hundreds of $millions every year, but they're still increasing tuition. This is still making costs go up for Pennsylvania students. So those are a few of the tensions. I mean, it's not a complete rejection of higher ed or singling out these universities. They still argue that they want to work with them. But as Representative Toppers argued, he said that I think the whole system needs reformed. We have to start adapting to what the needs are of today and how that's reflected in our system.
I think that those comments, too, they specifically reference this ongoing theme in the legislature of how do we keep young professionals in Pennsylvania to stay and grow and help build our workforce for the future. And there's argument here that, well, it's quite obvious that Penn State and these other state relateds are a big piece of that. And if they keep getting more and more expensive, it's hard to imagine why people would choose them when they could go to, state colleges in New York or New Jersey or wherever that would be significantly cheaper. It's the same problem that's facing our state-run system, but you can clearly see how they've taken steps over the years to try to mitigate that. And so it seems like the state-relateds just, I can see without any kind of change, this relationship's just going to get frostier and frostier, and it's going to derail the entire economic plan that that legislators see for the future to solve this. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something there. When you hear other legislators talking about higher ed, they point out these schools are so expensive. Why not attach this money to students and let them go either to a public university, to a private Pennsylvania university? Why give so much money to these 4 state relateds when other colleges seem to be doing more to rein in costs and make things more affordable? So I think this will be a growing tension, and I think you'll see more and more reference not only of the state relateds versus public universities, but state relateds as compared to Pennsylvania's private universities, and where the money really should be going, whether this is an institutional package or whether this is going to get more focused on individual students and funding them directly.
Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Anthony Hennon, this is Kristen Smith. Please subscribe, and thanks for listening.